If you spend any amount of time watching this channel, you're probably well aware that I'm eagerly anticipating the latest chapter in Ti West's horror trilogy. Even though I didn't really enjoy X, Pearl was my favorite film of 2022, and one of my favorite horror films of the past few years. X was by and large a pretty standard slasher, while Pearl veered off into more interesting territory. There's only been a handful of trailers and interviews so far, but by the looks of it, Maxine is shaping up to be one of the most experimental entries in the franchise. So what's going on with this film? Ti West has stated in past interviews that each film in his horror trilogy will be very different than the last one. Though Maxine feels like a return to the slasher genre we saw in X, I think it'll be more psychological this time as well. I might be jumping the gun here, but I think we have enough footage and plot details to start forming a few theories ahead of its release this summer. The story kicks off with Maxine Minx arriving in LA, a few years after the massacre that took place at the end of X. She gets her big break, a role in The Puritan 2, a mainstream film directed by Elizabeth Bender. Suddenly, her friends and co-stars start to disappear around her, as she's haunted by the ghosts of her past. Now, the synopsis in IMDb mentions that a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood. From this, we can assume that the killer has an obsession with Hollywood stars and fame, a running theme for the trilogy. Ti West often wears his influences on his sleeve. Typical 80s slashers like Friday the 13th may be at the forefront of Maxine's aesthetic, but more direct comparisons to Giallo, a subgenre of horror originating in the 1970s, have been made. The iconography is all here: suspect detectives, neon lights, and a black glove antagonist committing gruesome acts of violence. Maxine also seems to have an infusion of psychological horror, a common element in Giallo films. A lot of the promotional material suggested a notable serial killer or maybe even Maxine's father is after her, but I think I can foresee the twist here. We have scenes of Maxine roaming LA intercut with scenes of her life on set. If I were to take a guess at the film's framework, I think it's probably going to feel close to Perfect Blue in structure. We're probably going to see Maxine blurring the line between reality and fiction as she hunts this killer, all acting in a horror film, and possibly creating a few victims of her own along the way. Continuing on with this Perfect Blue theory, I think the killer will most likely be the mysterious director, Elizabeth Bender. I won't spoil the film for those who haven't seen it, but the killer in Perfect Blue was someone with a close connection to Mima. This director character has been kind of looming in the background, and there aren't many plot details to share at this moment, but we're not exactly sure how Maxine lands her audition. From the conversations we see between Bender and Maxine, it's clear that she has a close eye on her, and is possibly even obsessed. All of this, of course, fits the main theme seen in Maxine's teaser, an emotion's obsession. Meanwhile, Maxine will have her own personal demons to fight. In this TV spot, we see her having a panic attack while casting a mold on set. This will probably lead to one of the many dream sequences in the film. We can see a glimpse of Pearl taunting Maxine, and also what are most likely her wrinkled hands closing around Maxine's throat. The psychological thriller aspect of Maxine lends itself very well to extended dream sequences, and also hallucinations. Pearl had a dream sequence or two in there as well, so it's not too out of left field to suggest this. At the end of X, it was revealed that the pastor we saw delivering a sermon throughout the movie was actually Maxine's father. In clips, we're introduced to John Labette, a private detective hired by Maxine's father to track her down. We'll probably get to learn a lot more about Maxine's backstory as a detective, and the religious background she ran away from starts to interfere with her new life. Maxine's inability to shed her past seems to be a major theme, as we can see Lorraine's father, the father of Jenna Ortega's character, yelling at a protest. At least, I'm assuming this is Lorraine's father, judging by the sign he's holding and the shirt he's wearing, which has her face on it. These characters are most likely serve as a giant red herring to convince us that someone from her past means to kill her, when in actuality, the source of Maxine's torment will probably be the obsessed director. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some plot details that were leaked unintentionally, but when info on the movie was dry, a news story made headlines during Maxine's production. On January 12, 2024, Mia Goth was accused of kicking an extra's head on purpose during a take. He subsequently sued her for battery. Now, that's a lot to take in, and once the movie's finished, I'll have more to say about it, but for now, I just want to focus on the plot details. The extra in question was playing the role of a dead parishioner, and the scene was reported to have dozens of other extras in a church. All of this suggests that we're likely to get another hallucination that takes place in a church. It's also possible that this might actually be on the set of The Puritan 2, as the subject matter of this fictional film heavily involves religion. I think The Puritan 2 will tie into Maxine's backstory in many ways, and will cause a fair amount of PTSD for her as the film goes on. Speaking of Mia Goth, I'm a bit concerned about her involvement in the writing, or rather, lack thereof. Pearl was such a well-told personal story, co-written by Goth, and I unfortunately don't see her listed as a writing credit for Maxine. The story of X didn't really blow me away, and I'm worried that Maxine will feature a pretty box-standard murder mystery at its center. I also feel that the cast is too big. It's a weird complaint, I know, but with big names like Kevin Bacon, Giancarlo Esposito, and even Halsey, I'm not sure if the characters will have enough screen time to develop, or even worse, they may even take screen time away from Maxine's development. It's a bigger film overall, and that's just a symptom of the fact that they made Pearl during the pandemic. The production of Pearl came together in a short time, but it allowed for a tighter, more personal story with a smaller scope. My last fear for the film is that I feel Maxine, at least in X, was kind of a bland character. I mean, she was a small part of a large cast, but she didn't have much to do in the first film, save for being the final girl in the last few minutes. However, last week there was a special re-release of X, accompanied by 6 minutes of unreleased footage. I wasn't able to go personally, but there were plenty of recaps out there to get a sense of what people saw at this screening. It's apparently from the very beginning of the movie, so no real spoilers for this section. I also clearly don't have the footage, so sorry, you're gonna have to bear with me on this part. The first moments of the preview start with home video footage of a young Maxine doing a dance for her father's church. The father is filming and coaching her, trying to convince Maxine to succeed him as a leader of this church group. Maxine looks visibly uncomfortable, and we cut to the 80s. The title drop is the same as Pearl and X, but instead of a barn, we see studio doors opening as Maxine walks through. We then get an audition scene that is apparently very similar to the monologue from Pearl. So right away, I'm glad they're giving the character of Maxine more depth, at least in these first few minutes. And having her perform an emotional monologue reminiscent of Pearl's feels like a way to get the audience to immediately sympathize with her struggle, much like many of us did with Pearl. Maxine leaves the audition and taunts the other actors. We see that her license plate says Maxine, and she drives off. It seems like Banner's obsession with her starts at this audition, and we see her, as well as Maxine's father, established as these antagonistic forces early on in the film. Despite my initial fears for it, I'm open to seeing what happens to this character when she's thrust in the main role. And of course, I'm sure Mia Goth will kill it as per usual. I'm excited to see another installment of this franchise, and Tyler Bates is returning, so here's hoping we can expect more great music as well. Ty West has gone on record to say that this may not be the last film in the franchise. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, but if there's more to do with this sort of horror homage universe, I'd be interested to see where it goes. So those are my thoughts leading up to the release of Maxine. Are you excited to check it out? Let me know in the comments. This channel is mostly for analysis or reviews, but I figured I'd try something new before Maxine comes out. I'm working on another horror related video in the background of this one, so if that's interesting to you, please subscribe. You can also check out my other videos for more in-depth analysis on not only horror, but pretty much whatever I'm into. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.